Now that you're running your Jupyter Notebook of choice, let's review the File Browser tab and what actions you can take from here. You will not have a File Browser tab if you are using Interact. Let's walk through the tabs on the left side of the screen. Files is a view into the directory folder from where you open the Jupyter Notebook application. Running shows you currently running Jupyter processes. You can run multiple processes at once, including terminals. Clusters is now provided by IPython Parallel. See IPython Parallel documentation for installation details. And now let's move over to the right side of the file browser. With Upload, you can upload files from your system or drag and drop them into the file browser. When you click on New, you can see why the Jupyter Notebook environment is not just the notebook. It has a file browser, text editor, and terminal. These are often referred to as the building blocks for scientific computing in the Jupyter environment. You can use the drop-down menu to create new notebooks in your preferred language. Here, I have Python 2, Python 3, and R kernels installed. We'll cover kernels later in the program. For now, let's think of kernel as the programming language you want to use. Jupyter has a text editor for scripting straight-up Python or other code. You can also create and name a new folder. This will create a folder on your computer if you're running it locally, and on the server if you're using a hosted version. And finally, the terminal comes in handy when you are using Jupyter on a shared server and want to write code against that server to install packages or query what's installed on that server. You can also refresh the notebook list from here. Going back to the left side of the browser, the checkbox allows you to select all of the contents of your directory, while the drop-down menu allows you to filter the list of files and folders. This home folder takes you back to your original directory folder. Now that you have a good idea of the tools available to you when you first open the notebook, let's create a new notebook. Go ahead and click on New in the upper right-hand side of the browser and select the kernel you plan to use today, Python 2 or Python 3. I'm creating a Python 3 notebook. Once you select your kernel, a notebook document will come up with your first code cell ready for input. The best way to become familiar with the Jupyter Notebook interface is to start out with the user interface tour. Let's click Help in the menu bar to start the tour. Go ahead and finish this tour on your own. Here are some highlights about the Jupyter interface that weren't covered in the tour. Under the File menu, you can make a copy of your current notebook. Under Edit, you can find and replace text. Note that this is a case-insensitive search, and you can also use wildcards. Also under Edit, you can split and merge cells. And it's always good practice to click the Save icon periodically, or you can allow the notebook to autosave. Another pro tip, learn how to use the keyboard shortcuts. They will save you tons of time. A list of keyboard shortcuts can be accessed via the keyboard icon, and we'll use several shortcuts during this tutorial. Let's take a moment to take a look at our first code cell. Note the empty brackets to the left of the code cell. When we execute the code cell, a number will appear between the brackets. This number indicates the order of operations in your Jupyter Notebook. These numbers can change as you iterate through the notebook, so you won't necessarily want to use them as line reference numbers if you're jumping around executing different parts of your notebook non-sequentially. The cell highlighting changes color depending on whether it's in command mode or edit mode. Command mode highlights the cells in blue, and edit mode highlights them in green. You will also see the pencil icon to the left of your kernel when the cell is in edit mode. While the cell is in command mode, with blue highlighting, typing Escape M changes the cell type to Markdown. Typing Escape Y changes the cell type to a code cell. In both cases, hitting Return places the cursor in the cell. Now you should have a good feeling for the notebook interface. Now that you're familiar with the Jupyter Notebook interface, we'll do a warm-up in preparation for our upcoming data analysis. First, let's create a title for our notebook. We'll need to change our first cell to a Markdown cell by typing Escape M or by selecting Markdown from the cell type drop-down in the Notebook toolbar. The Jupyter Notebook uses GitHub-flavored Markdown, which, among other features, allows for different levels of headings in the notebook. Initiating the text in your cell with a pound symbol or hashtag or number sign will tell the notebook to use the topmost Markdown header. Your heading size will become smaller the more symbols you add, up to 6 of them. After that, your header will appear as regular text. Let's add a title to this notebook in cell 1 by using a single pound symbol, calling it Jupyter Warmup. Type Shift, Enter, or Return to execute the Markdown cell and render our formatted text. In Cell 2, also a Markdown cell, let's use two pound symbols to create a new subsection named Define Variable X. Type Shift, Enter, or Return to execute Cell 2 to render our text. Now, in Cell 3, let's keep the code cell and define a variable, calling it X. Type Shift, Enter to execute the code cell. While there is no output, 15 has been saved to our variable X. To show this, let's call our variable by typing X into the next code cell and then typing Shift, Enter. Print X provides the same output. Now you know how to perform the two most common actions in the Jupyter Notebook, adding text and running code. Let's look at how to add several other features to your notebook. First, hyperlinks. Hyperlinks can be added to a Markdown cell by typing the text you'd like to display on screen in brackets, and then adding the URL in parentheses directly after that text. When I click on the link, it opens a Jupyter website. Next, images from your local environment can be added to the notebook by either dragging and dropping the image file into a Markdown cell, or by manually adding the image by typing an exclamation point, or bang, followed by the image title in brackets, which won't show on your screen, then the file path to the image without quotes. You can add the image name without a path when the image is stored in the same folder as your Jupyter Notebook. You can learn more about using Markdown by exploring GitHub's online Mastering Markdown guide.